G'day there guys, Marky here, and welcome back to another episode of r/relationship advice. I do hope you enjoy today's stories. Now sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the Barbie, and let's get right into it. Am I the asshole for defending my husband after my ex-husband abandoned our children? I, 38 female, have a 9-year-old son Max and a 6-year-old daughter Olivia with my ex-husband Dan, 35 male. Max has severe autism and requires a lot of care. I remarried 3 years ago, and my husband Luke is incredible. My ex Dan, 35 male, has them 6 hours every week. This was on Tuesday, and as I was away for a funeral, Dan took the day off work to be with them in the morning and evening. Ex and his girlfriend Sophie picked them up as planned at 11 a.m. My husband took this time to play a round of golf with my brother. They finished the game at 4 p.m., and the golf is 30 minutes from our house. I got a call at 5 p.m. exactly from Sophie screaming at me about abandoning my kids. I was confused and eventually realized Luke wasn't home yet, so I told her where the spare key is so they could wait for Luke to come home inside. Unfortunately, Luke's car had gone kaboom on the motorway and he was in a complete coverage dead zone. He was able to call emergency services, but nothing else would connect. When the police arrived, the first thing he did was ask if someone could contact Dan to tell him what had happened. Sophie was already on the phone to the police to report me and my husband for child abandonment. They said one of us should have been there and my ex doesn't feel safe inside our home, so they've left the kids inside our home and that the police needed to go and save our kids and arrest us. What in tarnation? The police person speaking to them told them multiple times to turn around and that they were the ones who had abandoned them. This whole time, I'm getting messages from Dan saying how this was unfair on him and Sophie, and that I'm a terrible parent for leaving them with someone who doesn't give a shit about our kids. At this point, I didn't actually know what was going on. All I knew was that Luke wasn't home, but Dan had found the spare key. At no point did he tell me that they left the kids alone. Luke got hold of me via the police, and I arranged for a friend to go round there as soon as she could. But the police had already had a unit there after the call with Sophie. After this, I've decided to try to get his 6 hours a week taken away. I've given him so much leeway over the years, and this was my limit. Our son is dependent on an adult, and our daughter is 6, and the only thing he would say to defend himself is, well, I kept up my side of the agreement by bringing them back after 6 hours. This has caused a whole other shitstorm, to the point where Sophie sent me messages that the police are now investigating. Dan hinted that he is going to try and get the kids taken into care because of my husband abandoning them. I had multiple people ask me why I'm staying with someone who abandoned my children. His parents have threatened to try and gain custody of the children, saying the children need a stable family unit and calling my husband abusive. I said screw this and put the whole story with evidence on my private Facebook page, and people quickly understood. But now I'm being branded a drama queen and an asshole for publicly blasting the father of my children, putting my husband above my kids. I don't understand how. He's more of a father to them than Dan is. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Am I the asshole? I'm just so confused about this whole situation. How did they spin it to the point that you were getting attacked like that? They genuinely kicked it up a notch and people started flying in, just beating the shit out of you. Also, who's branding you a drama queen and an asshole for blasting someone that's quite clearly deranged and also an asshole? It's insane to me that you can still get attacked after being completely transparent. I don't know who in their right mind would come after you give all the receipts out. Can definitely see why you're questioning whether you're the asshole or not though, because the public is gaslighting you at this point. But I say not the asshole. In the comments, people ask, did you mean the police investigating you or Sophie? And OP replies, I worded it badly in the post. Sophie sent me messages and the police are now investigating those messages. Said some horrendous stuff about my kids and even worse stuff about me. Hopefully enough for me to prevent her from ever being near my kids again. More info on the police involvement. I won't speak too much on the police involvement, but I will say they won't be investigating them being left alone. That's being handled by a more appropriate service. I made the report about the texts she sent, and they're treating this as an ongoing pattern of behavior rather than a one-time event. I'm not entirely sure what they meant by that, but I think they'll consider other stuff that has happened and lump it all together. I'm speaking to an officer on Monday. In response to someone saying you shouldn't eliminate their father from their life, quote, I don't think removing your kids from him 100% is good for your kids, OP says, we're going to have to politely disagree here. He left them alone in a house and refused to go back even after the police told him he had to because they weren't his responsibility beyond that time. If that's not evidence that they are safer without him, I don't know what is. Here's a heavily downvoted comment, but OP's response gives more info. The comment read, I'd urge you to hold off on your decision until some time has passed. You want your decision to be well thought out and not reactionary after all. OP says, it's been 3 days. Assigning my very rightful anger about my severely autistic child and his 6-year-old sister being abandoned to being upset is demeaning and dismissive. How many times is an appropriate number of genuine child endangerments before taking action in your world? This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something he regrets. He still thinks he did nothing wrong. Also, the fact that you're just assuming I'm making a reactionary decision and jumping to no contact on something as serious as the contact my children have with their father? Patronizing as hell. As for any other behavior in the past, he has 6 hours a week for a reason. I won't be going into our history as it's not required here. I can't believe they called the police to tattle on themselves. OP replies, I don't believe this part of the story. It's why it's not in the post, but Luke swears it's true. I think he's exaggerating it slightly. After he asked the police officer to get someone to contact Dan, they came back and told him about the call from Sophie, based on the address given, and how someone at HQ was trying to tell them to go back to the kids, and said, I've dealt with some real bright sparks in my time, but that's a unique kind of dumb. Did your ex mean that he was going to try to take the kids, or that they would go to foster care? OP says, he recently moved into Sophie's place, and I remember hearing something about a cold day in hell before she lets them sleep there overnight. For all his many faults, he's self-aware enough to know that he can't look after them. He meant taken into foster care. His parents meant into their care. Block Sophie. OP says, she's muted. Police said that I could block her, but they're looking into her actions being harassment, so ongoing messages are very helpful for that. What did Sophie say in the messages? And OP says, about me, she said I was a shit parent, accused me of neglect, said my car might have an accident, threatened to fight me, accused me of cheating on my ex with Luke, despite him living on a different continent at the time. Just unhinged shit. I've had stuff from her in the past, but never to this level. I won't go into what she said about my kids. Flying Garbanzo Bean says, not the asshole. Wow, I'm glad your kids are okay. Sophie seems smug about the fact that the police are investigating, but she should realize that her and Dan are the ones they're investigating. Well, with everything said here, they abandoned the child if there was no one at home, and they just left the kids there by themselves. Since they originally had the custody on that day, they are responsible to make sure the child gets given back to the parent. Leaving them there alone is abandonment. It is their responsibility to make sure the child was taken care of properly. I think you have more than enough to terminate his custody. He wasn't even with the kid all day. His girlfriend was. He can't even stay with his kid for 6 hours? I wouldn't worry about it. Let them do what they're gonna do. I know it's hard when people are saying these things, but you at least have got your story out there. I wouldn't worry about the police. It's obvious that they abandoned the child and not you. Not the asshole. You were at a funeral. You entrusted the father of your children to actually care about the kids. He gets 6 hours out of the 168 hours in a week and didn't feel like having them for an extra hour? Regardless of circumstances, he could have said, oh, they're not home yet. I get to spend more time with my kids. Yippee. But instead, he threw them in the house and peace signed out quick. Does he even like his kids? Per the post, X threatened to have the kids taken into care, not threatened to go for custody. So he probably doesn't care about the kids. I hope he breaks his leg. If he doesn't want to be around them, OP's husband should be allowed to adopt them, if OP and the kids are comfortable, so that the ex-husband has no more rights to them. However, if he's paying child support, I believe that would come to an end. Update. So this happened a week ago. Post was made a few days after it happened. The post I made on social media had kicked up quite the fuss, but most things have been sorted. For now. And my post is still up telling people what happened. My brother Pete was friends with my ex-husband before we ever got together. He also never really got involved in our relationship or separation. He's never really been involved in my life beyond being a good uncle. He's a nice guy, but we've never been that close. He's always been closer to my ex, and now with my husband. When he found out what happened, that completely changed, and he put himself right in the middle of it all. My brother was always the beta in his friendship with Dan. I always suspected he was scared of him. Well, not anymore. He called Dan and ordered him to meet at Dan's parents, who he knows quite well. Dan was advised that bringing Sophie to this meeting wouldn't end well for him. I don't know exactly what was said, but the result of their conversation is that Dan's parents are going no contact with him. I don't like them, they've never liked me, but I've never doubted they loved my kids and would protect them with their lives. Pete did tell me that Dan made it clear he wouldn't break up with Sophie under any circumstances, even if it meant he wouldn't be able to see his kids. Pete explained what happened to my ex-in-laws, that the version of events I posted was true, and went through the timeline/proof. Dan argued and bitched and moaned until his dad told him to leave. I think the fact that my brother, who is known for caring about beer, women, and sports and nothing else, took this so seriously got the grandparents to wake up. I spoke to them, and although their apology was barely worth hearing, we came to an understanding. I'm not going to allow any visits and contact between Dan and Sophie and my children going forward. Our agreement was informal, no court orders or anything. If he wants to see them, he will have to fight for it, which I know he won't. Those 6 hours a week are now going to be with his parents on the condition that if they allow Dan to be around his kids, even once, they will be cut off of our lives. They were fine with this. Today came, and they picked up the kids and spent the day with them. They called me after 5 hours and asked if they could bring them back an hour later than planned. They were having a lot of fun painting, and the kids wanted to finish what they were doing. No problem. Thanks for checking. I cannot stress enough how much I dislike them, but knowing that my kids are with people who want to be with them is such a good feeling. Dan didn't even text me asking if he was going to have his scheduled time today. I spoke to a police officer yesterday about the messages sent to me by Sophie. I'm going to gloss over some details for reasons, but they're moving forward with an investigation. There's a continued pattern of behavior, and it has been escalating. She made some very specific threats, and over the weekend sent me a message that contained information she would only know if she had followed me to where I was at the time. Luke has set up external cameras on our house, including making sure our cars are covered by cameras at all times. Our neighbors know what happened last week, so they're going to keep a lookout for her as well. I feel awful that I let this person be around my kids for almost a year. I let her be around them, but didn't know her well enough to spot that she was capable of behavior like this. I spoke to Olivia to ask what she thought of Sophie, and she said she was grumpy and not fun, but nothing to indicate she hurt them or anything. This reaction to the whole situation is just unhinged. Luke has been a star through this. He's resisted the very strong urge to find Dan and beat him with a golf club. He's not worth replacing with a driver, and made sure the kids know that he loves spending time with them. Olivia calls him daddy anyway, but she knew she was abandoned last week, and he's shown her that he is here for her. He's always loved Max and has been amazing with him, but I know he's found it difficult to connect. He asked for advice, and I told him just to try things he enjoys and see if Max engages. Well, Max spent 5 hours on Sunday with a golf putter in his hand, hitting a ball to the putting machine thing like Luke has in the garage. And apparently he's a natural. Luke now has it outside, as Max became automatic in the garage, and needed a bigger green. So, I'm now reevaluating my life. Living with one golf obsessive was barely manageable. 2 may be more than I can endure. I'm currently typing this looking at Olivia's painting of a birthday cake. Deranged threats aside, I'm happy with how things are right now. In the comments, Stray's mum says, "I'm glad some things are smoothing out. Sophie sounds like a real winner." Sarcasm. Are the police going to do anything about Sophie? It kinda sounds like they're waiting for her to hang herself with all these threats. And what about Dan? Are Sophie and him being charged with child abandonment? OP says, the police are actively investigating and taking steps regarding Sophie. They have more than enough information to move forward. It's just a matter of going through the processes now. I don't know how the system works, but I believe there will be an arrest soon. And no, they aren't charging with child abandonment, but that issue is being looked at along with the bullshit with Sophie. I don't know what the plan is from the police beyond they have all the information. They're just focusing on the immediacy of her threats rather than what happened last week. Sharcher says, Sophie, while deranged, is also very cunning. She didn't want to spend time with the kids or have them at her place, and now the kids aren't allowed contact. But she looked like she put up a fight in the kids' best interest. Sophia must be really good in bed. Why else would he say breaking up with her is not an option? That, or he sees how crazy this woman is and knows what the hell his life would become if he scorned her. Well, the ex-husband moved in with Sophie, so he probably doesn't want to lose a good situation. If he has to leave his kids behind, then, oh well. His visitation was 6 hours once a week. He basically had already left his kids behind. Our next post is by user Jacob X Ria, titled, Am I the asshole for telling my brother it is not my fault his parrot likes me more than him? My brother has an African grey. He asked me to take care of her for 1 month while he and my sister-in-law went on their honeymoon. When he dropped her off, I asked, where are her toys? He said, I never bought her any toys. Waste of money. I thought that the bird might be bored, so I bought her some toys from a pet shop. They might be the reason that she started allowing me to pet her, or it might be something else that made us grow closer during that time. When my brother came back and saw how cuddly she got with me, he got upset since she's not that affectionate with him, and he said that I bribed her with toys to make her like me more than him. I told him that if it's the toys, then it's not my fault he didn't get her any, which upset him further. Only realized I was kinda mean with that jab afterwards. Am I the asshole? OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. I was kinda mean to him when he was already upset, which might make me an asshole. Picture this, OP. You walk into a basement with a bunch of people chained to the walls, and, they have no entertainment, they have no stimulation all day, every day, and suddenly you give them like a Switch or something. A month later, they're your best friends. He comes home and he's like, oh, what the hell, man? Why did you give them a Switch? Now they like you. You see what you're doing to me? You're making me out to be the devil. And you say back to him, hey, man, it's not my fault you have all these people chained up downstairs with no entertainment and I bought them a Switch. That's not my fault, man. Sounds like a you problem. Which is the lesser of two evils in this situation, OP? Let's be real. What is the lesser of two evils? He is neglecting this bird. This is a whole-ass African grey. Have you seen the videos on TikTok about them? That one guy, he's like, what is this cup made of? What is this cup made of? And the parrot goes, metal. Paper. Wood. They're so cute. But yeah, all of that is to say that he's the asshole here. I don't know why you being a bit rude about him abusing this animal would make you the asshole. In the comments, Arse says, not the asshole. It's disgustingly asshole-ish of your brother to not enrich the environment of such an intelligent bird like that. They are smarter than dogs. There are iPad-style communication and entertainment systems you can get for them now. They can even video call their favorite people. And that's so awesome to see. I follow a lady on Facebook who does research into this with her parrot. It's amazing how intelligent they are and how happy it makes them to be able to express their needs and just to learn things. Not the asshole. Shocking! The bird liked the person that actually paid attention to her, played with her, pet her? Your brother could do the same, and indeed it is not your fault that he hasn't. Makes me so angry to hear of bad parrot owners. Those birds are social 7-year-olds and it's all alone with no toys. Should be illegal. Not the asshole. You gotta steal that bird, girl. Bribed her with toys? Bruh, that sounds ridiculous. It's an animal. Obviously, it'd go to the one that's being more nice to it. Absolutely not the arsehole. Not the arsehole. Parrots, especially African greys, are highly sensitive and intelligent birds. They get bored easily if you don't interact with them and don't give them puzzles or toys. Sounds like you would be a better pet owner than your brother. Update. I talked to my brother and showed him the comments here and a few articles outlining how African greys need a lot of stimulation to be healthy. He was surprised to find out that his pet might start plucking out her own feathers and harming herself out of boredom and depression. He admitted that he wasn't ready to deal with a high-maintenance bird before saying that I can keep her. So I have a bird now. In the comments, Adam Skeeter says, "Why do people get pets, especially a more exotic one, and not do a lick of research beforehand about how to properly care for them? Just diving in head first while being completely unprepared for the reality of being solely responsible for a living creature with needs." Pet stores make it really easy. I remember getting a ball python as a kid and being given a really awful informational booklet from PetSmart to go with her. They didn't tell me how to keep an eye out for illnesses, what kind of substrate to use for her tank, and had next to nothing on sanitation. They didn't even mention including hides or heating pads for the tank. It's genuinely shameful how easy it is to get something that requires specialized care from places like PetSmart. This feels like the best outcome for both sides. The parrot stays with the person that it has a stronger bond with and who will take much better care of it. OP gains a companion, and the brother is no longer neglecting an animal, and will hopefully do more research before he brings a new pet into the family. Whoever sold that African grey to the brother should have their business shut down. You don't give a highly intelligent animal with demanding emotional needs that lives for 60 years to a person who does not know crap about birds. Honestly, most parrots should not be pets to begin with. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. There are no bloopers. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.